Welcome to the show, Ibidation Sports Talk. Off to a start here this afternoon on a Friday. It is pre-vacation day for Vince DeDario and family.
It's like DEFCON 5, whatever the high one is, whatever the danger zone is, that's what it is around here. The stress level is off the charts for everyone.
I can imagine.
I'm sure you're very similar to me because you're a guy, but like my daughter, she's like, well, Dad, how long does it take you to pack? I kind of looked over at my wife and she had a smirk on her face. I go, 15 minutes? And
I count the number of days. I pack one more pair of underwear than days.
Yep.
I, go through my vast assortment of T-shirts and decide which ones I'm taking. Now, the last trip that I made, I actually miscalculated, and I was one shirt short. But fortunately, I bought a shirt when I was out there.
Oh.
So that's what I wore, like on the last day, kind of walking around, because I had to save one, clean shirt for the trip home because I didn't want to smell like funk. But that's kind of it,
That's right. I was gonna say 10 minutes.
And socks, socks as well, obviously. But
I was gonna say 10. I was like, you know what? I'll say 15. And my wife's like, yeah, that's about right. Because I just go up there and just done. Like, it's it, and
pretty
like
much it.
I have 3 teenage daughters. I have a wife. My son is bringing his girlfriend, another teenage girl. Like, you would think that we're packing the house up, to move cross country.
That's a lot to fly with that many people. That's a big group. That's
party of 9, baby.
That's like just shy of a church group is what you got going on.
Seriously. I was gonna rent a church van basically for driving around. Those things are ridiculously expensive from the rental place.
I bet they are.
Crazy.
So how many days is it going to be? Like through the weekend basically, or
Thursday through Wednesday? So we travel on Thursday, and then the next travel day is Wednesday coming back.
So like a full week out there.
Yeah,
okay.
just about.
Nice.
Just about.
Very nice.
So,
all right.
Going off to the West Coast, that's a full day of travel. You know what I mean? So it's a travel day.
But you gain the hours going out. So I mean, as early as you're leaving, we landed in San Diego before I think it was 10 o'clock. Before 10 a.m. we were on the ground out there, leaving about the same time you did, I think. So
we will get out there at 1:15 California time. So
do you have a layover someplace?
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's why. That's it. We
3
had
hours in Minneapolis.
Well, I guess we didn't have direct, but that's right. I forgot about your mini. We had South Bend to Chicago, and it was maybe an hour and a half in Chicago, and then boom, we were going again.
Yeah, it's the 3-hour layover that does us in, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you fly steerage, Sean, because when you have a party the size of mine, you get the cheapest tickets possible.
Absolutely.
So,
well, I mean, you're always looking for the cheapest tickets possible. I mean, everybody is.
That's how I roll. You know what I mean? Yep. I played the sympathy card. I know because the level that we got, when you check in 24 hours in advance, that's when you're supposed to be able to pick your seats. And I played like a couple of weeks ago. I got on a chat with somebody at the airline. And I was like, hey, got a lot of kids, with me. They really just want to sit close to their parents.
Right.
And so they assigned us seats way in advance. So
well, that's nice.
That was a big double thumbs up. So that was good. So
we're all you had waited. Speaking of trips, we'll kind of wrap this up and then we'll. So an old buddy of mine from high school who we were both, in each other's weddings and stuff like that. And he's the guy that when I went to see the Royals in the World Series a few years back, we connected in Kansas City and went to the game together and that kind of stuff. And so he and his wife were in Las Vegas for a few days.
Okay.
And so yesterday afternoon, I get a text from him and he asks me, hey, is there any reason your sister would be in the airport in Las Vegas? and I was like, well, actually there is. She's flying back to Kansas to see my dad. And he's like, I swore I just saw her. And then I wasn't sure if it was her because it's been so long. So long story short, they're on Midwest and they end up sitting next to each other.
Because you can pick your,
him and his
Southwest
wife and my sister all sat together for 2 hours from Vegas to Wichita. So that was totally random, but they hadn't seen each other in 25 or 30 years or something like that. So
I kind of like Southwest. I've flown on Southwest a couple different times and I don't mind the whole pick your seat thing. You know what I mean? If if you're flying with somebody else. If you're flying solo, it's like, here we go. Whoa, here we go. You never know how this is going to go. I didn't mind it. It was a little more stressful not knowing what seat we were going to get. Like when I, booked the ticket. It was a little stressful.
Wouldn't want to do that with the amount of kids that you've got and everything else, to do that without knowing what your seats are going to be.
They were cool about it though. They're like, yeah, no problem. We'll put you together. Cause and of course we're like in the back of the plane. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, we all get there at the same time. Doesn't matter to me.
The weird thing is the back of the plane, because we were in the back of the plane on at least one of our legs, and we were still in one of the last boarding groups. You would think that, you would board from back to,
they don't do that though. They board it front to back, which makes zero sense.
I know.
0 cents. I don't.
Not at all.
The more money you pay,
there's just that many more people you have to sift through and everything else. Yeah.
And less of a chance you have of like getting room for your bags, like in the overhead, but that's whatever.
All right, let's go. We got some mailbag questions queued up and ready to go. Let's check them out. You might want to scroll back through there. I think Salty
I'm working on it
there, and you can make your choice of salty questions that you're going to throw in there as well, and I'll just blame you if you leave any out and he gets mad at us. So
that's fair.
So Joe wants to know, 60 days out from opening kickoff, less than a month from fall training camp, what keeps you fired up to get you through these last agonizing days?
Well, we just talked about it. Vacation. Very excited about vacation. Also very stressed. But I've been looking forward to this trip for a while. So that is one thing I've been looking forward to. Now, when I get back, then it's kind of like we're kind of in countdown mode, to be perfectly honest with you, because camp opens in July, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if we're allowed to say what day specifically. I don't know the rules. But
end of July. And, you know, like we're less than a month from camp opening right now.
So. Right. So it's going to be like around the corner. And then I'm teaching summer school too. So it like, for all intents and purposes, summer's over. So it's just a matter of like, okay, football camp's right around the corner and then it's go time. So getting to July was the key, I think, as far as like getting fired up for the season. And then it's like, it's go time. I mean, so it doesn't take much to get me fired up. Plus there's a lot of young talent. There's a lot of returning talent. So there's a lot to be excited about. So yeah, I'm fired up, man. It doesn't take much to get me fired up though. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, like today was a little bit of a slug, you know, kind of getting through and, you know, just kind of in, because it's like I've got a little bit of like short timers because of the 4th of July being this Friday and stuff like that, and then taking some time off coming up next week and that kind of thing. So it's like that's kind of, my brain is already sort of turning to mush. But just like you, the fact that we've got training camp coming up, because a lot of people, you know, like Joe started off his thing saying 60 days out from opening kickoff. Like I look at the start of the season, day one of training camp to me, like, because then we've got all kinds of new storylines. We've got coaches to talk to, players to talk to and hear from and all that kind of stuff. So like, and then we get into what parts of practice. I think we'll get day one, a full day of practice, and then we'll get a lot of partial practices and stuff like that. But we've got things to talk about at that point. So that's kind of how that's what is kind of the carrot dangling for me right now. Is camp's going to start in less than a month, and then we'll actually have tangible things to talk about. So
absolutely. And they actually do, like, they don't do a good job of giving us practice access, but they do a good job of giving us access to coaches and players.
Yeah.
Way more so than the last regime as far as that is concerned. I just wish we get to see more practice.
Yeah, for sure.
But, you know, beggars can't be choosers, and we'll take what we can get. But, yeah, getting to talk to the players and coaches is actually a big one. So definitely looking forward to that too.
Because I know, you know, like we don't care as much about cameras, you know, video and all that kind of stuff. I would take the trade-off. Like I would trade 2 partial practices where you get to shoot some, you know, your B-roll at the start of practice with guys running routes and, you know, offensive line blocking. Like I would trade 2 of those for a full practice if they just said, you can have the full practice, but you just can't use the cameras. So, you know, nothing.
Oh, yeah.
No cameras the whole time. I would take that in a heartbeat.
100%. This is going to sound very selfish because obviously we have access and other people don't. I could care less if we have cameras in practice.
No, exactly.
I mean, they usually only give us the first 5 periods anyway, and
Yeah.
I know people love watching anything they can get their hands on. You're not seeing anything in those first 5 periods from a legitimate, scouting type access. You're not seeing anything. But people just like to see guys throw the ball around, run around, the whole deal. So I mean, I get it, but I would very much agree with you on that one.
Mark wants to know the likelihood Texas A&M fans will buy up game tickets like Georgia did in 2017.
I don't think Texas A&M fans are as big of fans and travel as well as people think they do. Personally, maybe I'm
They've
wrong.
got a big alumni base, but I don't like it's like from Georgia.
Here.
From Georgia, it's a decent drive. From Texas,
that's true.
From College Station, that's a lot longer drive to get up here. Yeah,
I think you're flying at that point.
Yeah.
It's. I
mean, they've been here before. They've been here before. It's obviously been 20 plus years since they've been here, but A&M's been here before. I don't think Notre Dame learned its lesson from Georgia, and they've done some things to avoid that kind of thing happening again. And, like even Ohio State a couple of years ago when they were here, they had a decent turnout, but you didn't notice it nearly like you did Georgia. Same with IU. Like I was very impressed at the, very, very predominant Notre Dame partisan crowd in Notre Dame Stadium. So, I mean, there'll be some A&M fans. I don't think it'll be anywhere close I don't think we'll ever see anywhere close to what we saw with that Georgia game again, because Notre Dame is doing its best with, different technology and, all the different things to ensure that kind of thing doesn't happen again. And, again, I don't think A&M travels the way.
No, I don't think so. And look, everybody was worried about IU taking over Notre Dame Stadium, for the playoff game, and that didn't happen. And there's a much shorter drive to Bloomington, and there's way more IU fans around here, obviously, than Texas A&M fans, and they couldn't do it. I don't see A&M doing it.
Concur.
And Joe Allen is saying, didn't Nebraska overrun the stadium as well? They did, but that was like in
that was in 2000. That was 25 years ago.
It was a long time ago. A long time ago.
Yeah. And I think that was actually worse than Georgia. The Nebraska game.
Oh, it was
much.
I was there. Yeah.
That was about a month before I moved here, actually. So I was not there for that quite yet. But I saw it on TV, and it was like, what?
Yeah.
The old Eric Frost days.
Yeah, I was in the student section. It was a good game. I mean, it was a really good game, and Notre Dame almost pulled it off.
Yep. Andre wants to know which 3 players, offense and defense, will make the biggest locker room impact. This is a tough one.
That is tough because I don't know these players that well on a personal basis, in their leadership. And let's see here. But I think there's a chance. Oh, gosh. I don't want to put anybody out there, and I obviously don't want to put anybody on blast because I'm
going to say Drake Bowen.
Know. Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm going to say Adon Schuler.
Yep. I think Christian Gray would be a good one on
Christian
defense.
Gray could be a good one. Like maybe a guy like Donovan Heinisch, who's been around for a long time at this point.
Yep.
See him.
I could too.
I could see a guy like Burnham.
A lot of guys on defense with a possibility.
Yeah. Offense is a little tougher.
It is.
There's so many unknowns.
I mean, if you're going by people that have played a bunch, you got the Jaden Greathouses of the world, that's a possibility. You always want to lead.
He's one of the ones that came to mind. Like Greathouse and Raritan were a couple who kind of come to mind.
I mean, you want the quarterback to be a leader, but I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, do you want to put that kind of pressure on a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, a redshirt sophomore? I don't think they're going to do that intentionally, but I think they're both leaders. And so I think they'll both have the ability to be a leader in the locker room. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Especially as the year goes on, whoever wins the job. So I would put the quarterback in that conversation. One of the linemen or 2 will step up. I just don't know which ones that would be. I mean, I know who the talented guys are, but talent doesn't necessarily equal leadership as well. We'll see it as the year goes on, but those are our best guesses, I would say.
Mike with the correction. I should have known this. Eric Crouch. I got my Nebraska quarterback.
Oh, I wasn't
mixed
even
up.
paying attention to
Scott
that
Frost, of course. Eric Crouch.
Yes.
Yeah, Crouch. And I should have known that because you remember there's another guy named Eric Crouch who
I
we both
remember.
knew, who used to wear an Eric Crouch jersey around here in town. So,
He did.
Yeah.
He
You knew him better than
did.
me. But yeah.
Yeah, I did.
An old Vince nemesis, or you his nemesis. I don't know.
I don't know. I think he kind of made me into his nemesis for some reason. I guess that's your fault too. So
probably so.
You know,
he always felt slighted by me.
He did. That's whatever.
I never recognized his true talent and potential, I guess.
Has anybody yet? I'm not sure. We should stop. Sorry.
Salty wants to know, speaking of Nebraska, will they improve their record over last season as Matt Rule's historical third season results suggest? And will they make the playoffs? I'll say no to the playoffs. I'll say they'll improve, though. I mean, they've made incremental success in his first couple of seasons, and I think that they're still fighting for that all-elusive above 500 record, but I'll say that they'll at least slightly improve.
I mean, they were 7-6 last year, right?
With the bowl, yeah.
With the bowl, yep. They were 7-6 last year. This year, looking at their schedule, Cincinnati, Akron, Houston Christian. Never heard of them. Okay.
Challenging.
So that's 3 wins, probably. Then they've got Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, USC, UCLA, Penn State, and Iowa. Of that Big Ten schedule, there's at least 3 wins there, if not more. So I will say that they will improve on their 6-6 regular season, and then we'll see what happens in a bowl game. I do not see them as a playoff team. I think that might be a hill
not close,
too high to climb at this point. But, I mean, you got Penn State on there. They're going to be a good football team. You got USC on there. They're going to be an explosive football team. I know some people are high on Minnesota. Some people are high on what Michigan State could potentially do this year. Then there's Michigan. So, there's enough toss-up games on there that I'm not ready to say playoff, but I will definitely say better than last year.
Yeah, this is like Minnesota. This is like, what, year 7 or 8 for the old boat rower?
Been there for a while.
It's crazy how long he's been around.
I know.
Now. Yeah. So I think Nebraska, again, I think they'll be improved, but I don't think it's going to be like, it's not going to be challenging for a college football playoff spot or a conference championship.
A lot of Big Ten schools would take that schedule, though. I can tell you that. Like, that is not an overly challenging schedule. Joe M says their ceiling is 10-2. I could see that being their ceiling. If they have a good season, they could be 10-2, and then they're in the conversation to be in the top 4 of the Big Ten. But a lot of things are going to have to go right for Nebraska to be 10-2. I will say that.
I'm seeing more 9-3 than 10-2 is the ceiling, but
yeah, that's fair.
Because
8-4 would be a success for sure.
I mean, obviously they're high on Raiola and that whole thing. Well, I guess we'll see kind of what kind of progress he's able to make this year. Joe says ESPN has Bryce Young as a sleeper player to look out for. In or out on that?
Oh, I'm big time in on that. I selected him as like the breakout player or whatever when we were talking about the defensive ends, and I stick to it. I think, first of all, I think the number change is a good one, going from 30 to 95. I believe it's 95, 90-something.
It is. It's 95.
Okay. I think that's a big push towards defensive line stardom, number one. And number two, I just think that he's an athletic freak, and he is going to be asked to do more, obviously, but I think he's going to have more success too. More opportunities, more snaps equals more success, in my opinion, for Bryce Young. And it doesn't hurt that he's the son of a Hall of Famer. So when you're talking about recognition and things like that, when they have away games and all of that, I think that he's got a great opportunity to be that guy that everybody's talking about midway towards the end of the season.
Bryce Young might be a sleeper in terms of nationally, but he's not a sleeper for us. It's like you talk about it all the time. Whenever we do underrated type guys under the radar, it's tough because we're here and we talk about these guys all the time. And I think that there's actually quite a bit of expectation on Bryce Young this year, and for good reason, because I think he's going to have a really big year for Notre Dame. Like I think that this is going to be a big breakout year for him. Now, like in terms of ESPN saying, like a sleeper player to look out for, that it really kind of puts him in another category, because then you're talking about, nationally, not just with this team and what, what he, so, but I think that with, with his talent and what we saw from him last year, I think that we're going to see it. I think he's going to have a really big year for Notre Dame. Tyler, thank you for the super chat. Sir, you just slid that one in. If you had to pick one, did you enjoy beating Penn State on the field, or beating Penn State right now in recruiting, or Penn State fans looking like clowns?
I mean, all of the above is the right answer, but I mean, I would say beating them on the field is what is the most enjoyable, because that trumps everything, in my opinion, is beating them on the field. Now, beating them in recruiting tells me that they're going to continue to beat them on the field, which is obviously a good thing. And, all of that is just a byproduct of Penn State fans looking the way that they do. So beating them on the field is number one for me by far. Recruiting would be number two, because that's the future of beating them on the field. And then number three, all of those things just equal Penn State fans just looking foolish. I mean, just admit when you're wrong,
See, that's the thing. They don't know they look like clowns. So how can
know.
you revel in the fact that they don't look like, like that they have no idea that they look like clowns when they do it? So that would be number three for me. And I'm with you. Beating them on the field is where it's at. Like beating them in recruiting right now is about what happens 2 to 3 years down the road. So beating them on the field when it counts, that's what matters most. So no matter what they say or how clownish they look, all you got to do is say, remember that Orange Bowl? Like that's
a
the
mic
tangible
drop
result right there. Yeah. Scoreboard, Orange Bowl. Later.
Exactly. Love it.
Speaking of travel, Joe, planes, trains, or automobile, preferred travel vehicle?
Okay. So I would say the most, my favorite in get you someplace quickly would be an airplane. Okay. I'm not a big fan of road trips, although we had fun going to Atlanta and back. And I will also say, if time was not a thing, like if we just had all the time in the world, I would love to travel by train. I think there's a lot to be said about train travel, and obviously that's a thing of the past for the most part. But train travel is kind of fun. I've been on a train before, not like super long distances where I have to spend the night or anything. But like we did a train trip when I was a kid, and it was a lot of fun. So I would put it in that order exactly: plane, train, automobile.
I'm the same. Like I actually in Germany when I was over there, we used to, the train system, across Europe is a lot more prevalent over there. And so like when we lived in Augsburg, and Munich was like a 45-minute train ride away, so you could get on a trolley, you could walk off post, get on a trolley, get to the train station, boom. The next thing, within an hour, you're over in Munich, and then you could, like walk around, tool around, do whatever you want. And again, there's trolleys and all that kind of stuff. And, so that you don't have to worry about paying to park and all those different kind of things. And in terms of long distance travel, I did actually one time, my first Christmas out here, to save some money, I took a train when my family was back in Colorado, and actually there was a snowstorm. So it's like it spent all day out at the Amtrak station here in South Bend, finally get to Chicago. They had to put us up in a hotel because, all the storms and everything. And so it was like,
oh, wow.
It ended up being a longer mess than I would have liked, but it's actually, again, if time is not a concern and you've got time, there's some definite benefits to train.
Yeah. So you got the dining car, you got,
there's like a coastal, like on the West Coast, there's like a train that you can take from like San Diego to Seattle.
Yes, that would be cool.
Do it in like a day and a half or something like that. I think that'd be fun to do sometime.
No, that would be really, really cool. I've seen a lot of like, travel bloggers like doing like the train travel and stuff like that. And you can like literally watch the terrain across the country change as you're on the train. Like I think that would be cool, but again, you got to have some time on your hands to do that.
Yeah. Not a fan of the airport experience either, and I've been spoiled a bit, by like
Well, yeah,
charter travel and
that's
stuff like
true.
that.
You guys are in and out, man. Like
We were actually very fortunate though, like with our San Diego trip that we had. Like
Mm.
everything both ways went pretty smoothly. So
very limited pool to draw from, but I have never had issues, with travel and things like that. Yeah, you got layovers and you got, you have to entertain yourself and, some things like that. But I've never had an issue, like, knock on wood, since we're going tomorrow, but like I've never had an issue where I've been put up in a hotel or, because of canceled stuff. But I understand on the East Coast, there's all kinds of crazy weather that's postponing travel. Luckily, I guess we're going the other direction. But it's going to be interesting. I will say that much with the large party that we are going to be traveling with.
Which Notre Dame opponent, excluding Miami and Texas A&M, is most likely to be more formidable than many expect?
I guess it depends on who you talk to. I think USC is going to be a formidable opponent in the middle of the season in October. They're not going to be super tested by the time they get to Notre Dame. So that's going to be their Super Bowl, in my personal opinion.
And it could be the last meeting and all that
right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, nope, absolutely. So USC would be my answer. Not overly worried about Arkansas going down there. I don't think they're that good of a football team right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going into SEC country. I get that. NC State, I think, is supposed to be pretty decent this year. I don't know. I guess those would be – Navy's going to be really good for a group of 5 team, as they were last year, but Notre Dame didn't have a problem with them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I don't necessarily worry about Navy anymore. I was always worried about Navy when Brian Kelly was here. I'm not worried about Navy anymore. So I don't know. I pretty much named half the schedule. So you got anything else?
There's a good Jesse answer. Yeah. Mike says Boise State. I just think without Genty and some of the other losses that they have, I think that they'll give Notre Dame a respectable game. But I think by the time, I expect Notre Dame to kind of pull away later in a game like that. I just think it's USC because of the offense. Like the last couple times USC has been to Notre Dame, those games have been pretty lopsided, even with Caleb Williams, a couple of years ago because of the turnovers and stuff like that. But I just feel like with the rivalry and all that could be on the line for the future, they're going to have a legit offense. So I feel like it's going to be them. Outbound says Pitt. That could be kind of a sleeper. They've got an All-American on each side of the ball coming back. They're always going to play fairly sound, but I just feel like Notre Dame from a pure talent standpoint is going to ultimately overwhelm Pittsburgh. I'll be curious to see how they look because they started 7-0 before they collapsed last year. So
yeah, no, that should be real interesting
for sure. Let's see. There was one. Crying Belly. Vince has an unsolicited insult against over under 2.5 Vince unsolicited insults against Steve Angeli before the season starts, then proceeds to call fans soft and emotional while saying he himself is neutral toward Angeli.
I never said I was neutral toward Angeli, first of all, because I'm not. I'm neutral toward him as a person. I think he's a good person. Just don't think he's a great football player. That's my answer, and it always will be. I don't know why we have to keep going down this road. He doesn't play for Notre Dame anymore, so I wish him all the luck in his new quarterback competition that he's got going on at Syracuse. So that's where I'm at.
Way to shut it down. Well done.
And it's never unsolicited, by the way. You asked the question, number one.
Good point.
So I don't
can't be unsolicited if someone is asking about it. That is literally the definition of soliciting a response.
Exactly.
So
right.
Joe wants to know if Notre Dame gets a home playoff game, what's the one team you guys would love them to host?
Oh man. See, this is just a spiteful answer, but it's LSU. And
I feel a lot different about this than I did a year ago because, like after the run that Notre Dame went on, they're obviously like the two programs are in a lot different places right now. And like I would have wanted as Notre Dame's first ever college football playoff game a year ago, I would have wanted no part of the circus Brian Kelly, LSU coming into town a year later. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I would feel very confident going into that game, and probably for all the wrong reasons, but I would enjoy watching that whole scenario take place. I would. Now, if you take them off the list, if you said, well, anybody but them, then I just want like a blue blood type team. As Justin said, Alabama would be a good one. Bring somebody in, like a Tennessee would be a good one.
I think Alabama would be great.
Yes.
I honestly wish Notre Dame would have played Alabama instead of Indiana last year.
Oh, yeah, that would have been.
I would much rather have seen it be Alabama at home than Indiana.
Yeah.
I think, like you talk about electric, that would have been an even more amped up atmosphere. Jacob specifically asking you, any chance Schmidt wins the field goal kicking duties?
No, probably not this year. They brought in the Burnett kid for a reason, and he's got experience. The Schmidt kid is out, he's a true freshman. So I would definitely start with Burnett. Now, if he can't make a field goal, then obviously you reevaluate the situation. I don't see him winning the field goal job outright. I would say if Notre Dame has to kick like a 60-yard field goal to win the game, they might trot out Schmidt because he's just got a really big leg. Yeah. I could definitely see that happen like they do in the NFL. Like they'll bring the punter out, to kick a long field goal, that kind of a thing.
End of half kind of thing. Yeah.
But that's not winning the field goal job. You know what I mean? I think realistically, he will be the kickoff guy. But I don't think he'll win the field goal job. That's me personally. And Burnett did not look atrocious in the spring. He had one bad kick in the spring game, and he made all the rest. So,
and we've seen other kickers have bad springs, and it's worked out. We've talked about this before. I think, what helps those guys out, and we've seen this the last couple of years, the long snapper, the holder, the kicker. Once they get
correct,
the first two jobs sorted out, and they're working as an operation together, those three guys, they'll have 1 million reps this summer, and it all that timing, because that's what it comes down to for those guys. It's just the timing and that kind of thing.
It's a new snapper, it's a new holder, and it's a new kicker. None of the three have ever worked together.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And so they're going to need as much time as possible to, become that 3-man unit that can do what they want to do over and over and over again, like a starting pitcher, right? So I'm not worried about it at this point. Believe me, of all people, I will let you know if I'm worried about the field goal kicking. All right. Don't worry.
If the Pac-12 or whatever number reconstitutes itself, what needs to happen for it to be considered a Power 5 conference? One of the other conferences needs to implode the way the Pac-12 originally did, because with the schools in that conference, it will never be considered an autonomy conference again.
Just taking a bunch of Group of 5 teams and putting them under the moniker of a former Power 5 conference does not make them a Power 5 conference. So that's where I'm at. Every team in that conference has state after that. Doesn't make them a bad conference, but it makes them a brand new conference to the power, the Power 4, and they're just not going to be. What do they need to do? They need to beat a bunch of Power 5 teams over and over and over again. And we're talking you need to see some consistent domination of other Power 4 conferences, in my opinion. And that needs to be across the board, not like one Boise State team going out and winning some Power 4 teams, that kind of a deal. They're going to have to go out and consistently in the non-conference beat Power 4 teams on a regular basis. I'm thinking over a decade, to be perfectly honest with you, before they are even going to be close to be considered about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, it sounds cool for those schools, Boise State and Texas State and, all these teams to say they're in the Pac-12 now, but it's just not, it's not the Pac-12, obviously.
Right.
And that's what it comes down. And Boise State, of the teams that's going to be there, is the only proven consistent winner. And they've been doing it for almost 20 years now. Boise State has kind of become the Gonzaga of the college football world. And, it's not just 1 or 2 seasons. They're doing it very consistently, and they still have a hard time finding teams to schedule them, which, again, like for anyone who wants to knock Notre Dame's schedule, there's not too many other schools that are willing to schedule Boise State. And Notre Dame's going to do it this year. And obviously, as it turned out, it was right after the playoff. But I just don't see much for whatever, like this iteration of the Pac-12, when Oregon State and Washington State are your only former Power 5 type schools.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. Again, they're pulling a bunch of Group of 5 teams up into this conference. It doesn't matter what you call them. That doesn't change who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to take some time.
Which Power 4 schools with next-gen head coaches will have the most success over the next 5 years? Arizona State, Michigan State, or Indiana?
Well, I mean, those are actually really good choices, to be perfectly honest with you, because I think you can make a case for any one of the three. I like where Michigan State is headed, to be perfectly honest with you. I like their head coach. I like their quarterback. I think they're doing a lot of things correctly. And in my opinion, what they have going for now, you can make the same case for Indiana, but what they have going for them, they're in the Big Ten. And the Big Ten gets a lot of credit, whether they deserve it or not, when they go out and win games. More so than Arizona State will get in the Big 12. So I think the answer here is either Michigan State or Indiana. For me, I'm going with Michigan State. I think I just like their foundation a little bit more. Maybe a year from now, I'll have a different opinion if Indiana is able to kind of not repeat what they did last year, but in the neighborhood of repeat what they did last year, and then see where Michigan State kind of is after year 2 as well. So I lean toward Michigan State here, but I could make a case for either Michigan State or Indiana.
I have to go toward Michigan State as well, because of the three, they're the only school that's proven that they can win consistently in recent memory. They were doing pretty. Remember, they made a 4-team college football playoff a few years back. They got waxed, obviously, by Alabama right away, but they still made it. Arizona State is a school that I've just always wondered why, where that you've got great weather, you've got all this, stuff in your favor. Why haven't they been able to do it? I feel like for Dillingham, because that's the other thing is, and I'm drawing a blank. Jonathan Smith, like he's already proved that, he started a track record of his own at Oregon State, proved he could win a little bit at a non-traditional place that you can win. And then obviously, with all the Pac-12 stuff going on, made the move to Michigan State. So I feel like between his background, what Michigan State has previously done, I feel like for Dillingham, like they should be good again this year. But what happens after Levitt's gone, and they have a lot more attrition, because I think it's like 17 of the 22 starters they've got back this year. So they've got a ton back from last year. So I think that they're going to be good again this year, but what's that going to look like next year when they probably have to completely reload? And that's already where Curt Cignetti is at, because he leaned so heavily into the transfer portal. I mean, give him credit for taking a school that had never done anything and getting him to the playoff in his first year. Didn't have the toughest schedule, but I feel like with his reliance on the transfer portal, like heavy reliance on the transfer portal, and you heard him complaining about NIL and the fact that they couldn't compete with some of these other schools who go heavy with NIL funds and stuff like that, I think Indiana is going to have a harder time as well. So between the three, it's Michigan State for me as well. All right. Back to the vacation. If you did a Home Alone situation, Vince.
Oh boy.
If you had a Home Alone, one kid got left at home to fend for himself against 2 crummy burglars, which one would be the most sadistic to the burglars?
Well, so for me, I'm going to take Dylan out of the mix because he's an adult, technically. So I'm taking him out of the list, out of the mix. It's going to be my 13-year-old daughter, Chloe. She would be relentless. The other 3 are a little too shy, probably. But she is definitely not that. And I could see her being that person for sure. I would trust her to do a lot of things around the house. And defending our house would be one of them.
Okay.
So
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. She's a Spitfire.
Like Irish English, going back to the last question, saying Arizona State clearly has the best chance to win a conference. Yeah, like again, for this year, like I've been saying, a lot of people are really disregarding Arizona State. Now they have to prove that they can do it for a second year in a row. For this year alone, if those were the three options, I would definitely be in on Arizona State. But the question was over the next 5 years, and that's why I think that Smith at Michigan State has the better chance to do it. Now, again, like D'Antonio, like he built it up and they had it running there for a while. And I think that Smith can do something similar to that. Because all you've got to do is be in the top 6. If the Big Ten gets its way, you just have to be in the top 6. And then you're going to have these play-in games for, to get into the college football playoff if the Big Ten, if that format ends up going through. So that's really all Michigan State has to be shooting for. Just be in the top 6, get into one of those play-in games. So I think that that's doable. And that's doable, quite honestly, for Indiana as well. But I just think that there's a better chance at Michigan State.
Yeah, I agree.
Joe wants to know favorite all-time Joe, respectively. Joe Montana, Joe Pesci, Cotton Eye Joe, or another.
I mean, Joe Pesci's a good one. I am a big fan of Joe Pesci because he's always in like the gangster movies and stuff like that. And those are always good movies, So Joe Pesci's a good one. Here's the thing about Joe Montana for me, and I know that you're not a 49ers fan for obvious reasons, and I'll let you go off on your tangent in a second.
You're darn right.
Joe, I wasn't old enough to watch Joe Montana at Notre Dame, right? And then, so I never really fell in love with Joe Montana as a Notre Dame fan. And I certainly wasn't a 49ers fan back in the day, in the 80s when he was doing his thing with the 49ers. So I was never a huge fan of Joe Montana. And I met him in person after he retired and stuff. Leaves something to be desired.
Didn't really could have met another Joe and had a better time.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I don't want it. That's where I'm at. So for this particular question, I'm going to go with Joe Pesci.
Joe Montana officially ended my childhood. I was segging into my teenage years by that point anyway, when The Catch, Dwight Clark, that whole garbage. And then, I lived out there in that area for a year, and it's it's memorialized everywhere. We would go to a bowling alley and there's the Nemeth painting on the wall, the Dwight Clark and The Catch. It's everywhere out there. And then, like you said, Joe, not the most personable guy. We found out once we came here to Notre Dame. My Joe would be Namath. Always there for a good time, guaranteed the win, the finger wag.
It's a good one.
Number one, I would go Joe Willie over Joe Montana or Joe Pesci. Yep.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. I'm trying to think of other Joes. I had a best friend growing up named Joe, but that's not going to work.
Joe Carter, Toronto Blue Jays slugger, won the Game 6 of the World Series against the Phillies. I'm trying to think of some other good Joes. I don't know.
Maybe it's something to come to me as we move along through the show. But yeah, all right, I like it. A good question, weird one, but a good one. Weird one, but a good one.
Mark says stadium expansion back in the late 90s basically built around the house that Rockne built, keeping that history. How well did the Campus Crossroads project maintain that history?
Look, I think they did a good job, and I think the architecture around campus continues to do a good job of keeping the feel of what the campus is now. Now, obviously, there's a lot more buildings on campus over the last 10 or 15 years than there ever were before, but they use the same architecture, the same brick, the same just history of it all, even though they're all brand new, beautiful buildings. So I think with the stadium itself, I think they did a really good job. Now, obviously, you can't see the old stadium from outside anymore, but when you walk in, you can still see the old stadium. It's still there as soon as you walk in the gate. And I think that's a very unique feature to Notre Dame. I don't know of any other stadium that has done something quite like that. And I think that's awesome that they were able to keep the structure of the old stadium. And it's very visual when you walk in that first corridor. and you're walking around. I mean, you're literally walking around what used to be the outside of the old stadium. And I think it's a really cool look. And I really like that they were able to do that. So that's a really good question, Mark.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of, sort of keeping the integrity of everything else that they've got going on, look, a lot of people didn't want a video board, Jumbotron, whatever you want to call it. I think that's been a really good addition to the stadium and the game day experience that they've got out there. And we were talking a couple of weeks ago about sort of the balance of the modernization of the program and keeping history.
Yeah.
And that's at a place like Notre Dame, that's something that you always have to balance. But I feel like what they've done has been really good. I think that it has helped. I think that it has aided the game day atmosphere in there.
Yeah.
And it's also accomplished a lot in terms of like extra classrooms, obviously, different technology that they have. And like it's not like the stadium is not all of a sudden a sore thumb. It's just a bigger stadium that looks a little bit more ominous, both inside and outside.
It looks nice
now.
on the outside. I mean, It looks like a modern stadium on the outside.
Yeah. And the sound, because of the fact that you've got it built up on the sides and with the video board over there at one end, the sound stays in the stadium better. So like I think it's a much better, especially for the big games, like look at the playoff game and the USC games, like it's a much better big game experience that you've got as a result.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. 100%. It's a good question. You guys are bringing it today. I like it.
I know. Let me see. Joe asks, Joseph O'Hara, if CJ Carr wins a national title as a freshman, would he be the favorite for Heisman next year?
Man, if Notre Dame wins the national championship this year and he would be a redshirt freshman, obviously. I mean, how could he not be one of the favorites? I don't know if I would say he is the favorite, but he would be one of the favorites. He'd be on the front. He'd be on the front of a lot of these magazines. I can promise you that. He would
hold that up again. Which magazine is that?
That is the Athlon Sports. You got Jeremiah Love down there.
I see that.
You got Arch. He gets the biggest photo because of his last name. But look, if Notre Dame wins the national championship, obviously the quarterback would have had to play well. Let's be honest, right? So, that means CJ Carr played very, very well. He's a national champion. He's going to be one of the front runners. I'd say one of the top three. Because you just don't know how things are going to shake out in the offseason and what, other guys are going to step up this year and all of those different kinds of things. So I would say he would be one of the favorites for sure. How could you not be? He's the quarterback at Notre Dame and they won a national championship. Look, if CJ Carr is leading this team to an undefeated season or, a national championship contending season, he's going to be in the conversation this year. But yes, going into next year, he would absolutely be one of the front runners. Absolutely.
That was a lot of words for something you could have answered with 3 letters. Y-E-S. That's it. That's all that you need. He will, if they win a national championship with him as the quarterback, yes, absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt. All you're going to hear about is CJ Carr Heisman hype heading into next season. And quite honestly, if he's the quarterback and they're, when the Heisman is given out this year, there's a very good chance that he's going to be in that Heisman picture as well this year. So
no doubt about it. And obviously Jeremiah Love will be in that picture and CJ Carr will be in that picture. And I mean, that's just what comes with success. Remember, like team success brings individual success, as our good friend Marcus Freeman likes to say. So no doubt about it.
Andre wants to know if we believe Notre Dame's building its program like Georgia and Alabama on defense.
I guess it depends on what your definition of building like them. I mean, just like a really, really good defense year in and year out. Yeah, I think they're in that neighborhood. I think there's still some steps to go before they are considered that dominant. I mean, when you think about those Alabama defenses that were really, really good and the Georgia defenses that were really, really good, they were really, really good up front. And, we're talking defensive tackles and defensive ends and things like that. Not saying that Notre Dame's depth and all of those things can't be, championship level, but like those guys were imposing figures, you know what I mean? And I think Notre Dame has some guys that are trending in that direction, but I don't know if they're there yet. So, I think that would be a goal in the future. I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a blueprint. It's sort of always been the blueprint, but obviously Brian Kelly was never able really to get the recruiting to that level because he had to shop down a different aisle by his own choice. And Marcus Freeman has obviously taken that in a different direction. Like part of the blueprint is those those big boy bodies down in the trenches, right? Like the defensive line. And that's where they're still trying to catch up. But like if you look at this 2026 class, obviously they're making up some ground there. They just have to keep stacking that going forward. But when you look at the secondary and you look at the linebackers and you look at the different level of athleticism that they had right now compared to 5 years ago, like across the board, because I'm not saying that nobody, like Julian Love was obviously very good. Kyle Hamilton was obviously very good. There have been some guys kind of, like a little bit more scattered, but now when you look at that secondary, when you look at the next two levels, linebacker and secondary, and their kind of athleticism, and you kind of apply that to what the best of Georgia and Alabama were, I definitely think that's the direction Notre Dame is going in. And like I would say, again, secondary linebackers, they're pretty close, if not on par with where they are. It's just they just need some more bodies. They need some more dudes down on the defensive line. That's where they're going to get.
Yep. That's the only spot for me is the defensive line. And like I said, Notre Dame is kind of building it a little bit differently, maybe on the defensive line. But once they start doing it on a consistent basis over and over again, they'll start getting some of those bodies in there that can be that imposing group, so.
Joe wants to know the 1 4th of July food that you could go without, and why is it watermelon? Ooh. I feel like that's a big insult to watermelon. Like a nice ice cold watermelon, that hits the spot on the 4th or any time in the summer.
Are you a seedless watermelon guy, or do you like to spit the seeds at people?
Primarily seedless. Yeah, I don't like.
I'm just asking.
Seeds are just a nuisance.
They are. They are a nuisance. I agree with you. I'm not getting rid of watermelon. You want to know what I'm getting rid of? Baked beans. And I don't know if that's a 4th of July staple or not. I just am not a fan of beans, and I will never go to the baked beans, but they always seem to be there at cookouts. And it is not a favorite of mine in any way.
Christopher says macaroni and cheese.
Oh gosh, no.
Isn't 4th of July food. It's a little like it's usually potato salad, baked beans, like your brats, your burgers, whatever. Barbecue chips are like the go-to as well for the like good snack food. Finish off your meal on the 4th. I would say like if I'm gonna punt one, I'd probably just go with the hot dog because like a lot more bang for your buck with a good bratwurst, basically.
Oh, you're a brat man. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm usually a burger guy if given the option, but if you're giving me an option between brats and dogs, I'm definitely going brats. There's no doubt. Like that's not even a question. It's not even a question.
Appreciate it, Joseph. He says we get him through his IB gets him through his workday.
We do what we can for you, Joe. Appreciate you, man.
I agree. Irish English brats over dogs by a mile. Like
it's not close.
A nice hot dog every now and then. Okay, but I'd still 10 out of 10 would go with the brat over there. And there's a place. What's the name of that meat market? I can't think of it. My wife goes out there. They've got like 50 different kinds of brats. It's out on the west side. Eby's. Yeah. And there's like a jalapeno cheddar, and then there's another one that's like a jalapeno popper brat.
Really?
Yeah. We might have to make a run out there tomorrow because I'm getting hungry talking about all this food.
Are you, speaking of hot dogs, are you going to watch the hot dog eating contest on Friday?
We have zero like definite plans. We're still trying to figure out what we're doing. We might go see a movie.
Okay. Okay. I can
might see F1.
I really want to see that one. It's already been out.
We thought about it last weekend, but then we found out it was 2.5 hours long. So we kind of were like, I don't know.
2.5 hours of Brad Pitt. You can't go wrong there, right?
Well, that's better for my wife.
That's how you sell it to your mom. I mean, your wife. That's how you sell it to her.
Right.
Come on. It looks like a good movie. I've heard good things about it.
I have too. It's got really good reviews.
We went to the movies the other day to see something different, and I could hear the F1 movie in the theater next to us.
I kind of want to see. I'm not like huge into the John Wick series, but they've got that John Wick Ballerina out right now, and compared to everything else that's out right now, I think it looks interesting. But I can't talk my wife into it.
Yeah, so, I get it. I do want to see the new Superman movie. I know we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but if this is supposed to be like the relaunch,
I can't make up my mind if I like that guy or not.
Which the new Superman?
The new Superman.
Well, you got to watch the movie. You got to give him a chance.
They've worn out those trailers, though, man. I feel like I know him already. So.
That's fair. They have worn out the trailer. My 10-year-old is excited about it.
People were going to die, Vince.
Well, and I've gotten to the age, and I heard somebody else say this, so I don't want to take full credit, but I have gotten to the age where, growing up, Lex Luthor was always this old guy, this just gruntled old man.
Gene Hackman.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's a child. Like, who is this guy, and why is he so young? Like, what has happened? Why am I old? Why is Lex Luthor young?
Carlos asks, when Notre Dame starts to sell beer at the stadium, what will be your first drink of choice? Well, one, we won't have choice. They won't be serving them up where we sit. Like assuming that they're going with Guinness, that would probably be the direction I would go. If it's like the first game and I was out in the stands and they're serving Guinness, that would probably be the way to go.
Ooh. Yeah, listen.
You're not a dark beer guy, though.
Nobody's going to be surprised by this. I'm saving my money. I'm not spending money on beer in a stadium. Like, it's not.
There you go. So there you go. All you had to do is you're saving your money. Sean Kelly wants to know what is the big surprise and when will it be revealed?
Well,
a lot of people want to know.
I think you're gonna have to wait.
That's right. You gotta wait. If we could just tell you right now, it wouldn't be a big surprise now, would it?
That's right. You got to wait on it. You got to,
got to wait till Christmas Day to open your presents.
That's right. 100%.
I'm hoping, because, we talked yesterday, got some technical things to make sure they're going to be sort of in working order. And I touched base with the guy who's kind of like the technical guy, and maybe by the end of next week.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm hoping by the end of next week. We
Nice.
should have it all together, and then maybe at that point,
okay,
we'll get the go ahead.
Nice. I like it.
Okay.
I like it. I'm there. I'm here. I'm here for it. I'm excited.
Me too. I think we all are. Of the elite program quarterbacks that will start with little prior collegiate game experience, Sayin, Manning, Carr, Minchie, who will be the top three and in which order?
Ooh. I mean, how can we? I
think that's probably the top three right there would be mine.
In that order?
Well,
okay.
I'm just saying those would be the top three.
Yes, I agree.
Carr, Manning, Sayin, those are definitely the three most prominent guys, but man, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I would say right now, I'll go Manning, Carr, Minchie, Sayin for now. That's where I'll sit right now. Because, and look, Manning's got 1,000 passing yards to his name right now, and Carr and Minchie don't have that. And so I'll go with the amount of experience that Arch Manning has, and he's got a really good team around him and all of those different things, and so I'll give him the edge for right now. So I'll go Manning, and then I'll go the Carr Minchie combo, and then I'll go Julian Sayin.
I like that. Manning's got a little bit more experience. I think that there are both Ohio State and Texas have more proven wide receivers right now. That doesn't mean that Notre Dame doesn't have the talent. Right. They have more proven wide receivers than either Notre Dame or than Notre Dame, like those two. So, yeah, I like that. I saw something today. Jeremiah Smith likes Julian Sayin's arm. I mean, you would hope so. He's at Ohio State, and he's the quarterback. You would hope
probably throws it to him a lot, and he probably likes that too. Why would you not? But And what's he gonna say? Well, I'm not a big fan of the guy who's starting for at Ohio State. I wish I had CJ Carr throwing me the football.
Yeah, exactly.
He's gonna throw some love to his guy.
Salty thinks the big news is I'm getting a computer more recent than my current Atari. I take offense to that.
Wow. Ouch.
I've got a nice Mac setup here. It's it's purring like a kitten, knock on wood. Computer's not the issue. It's all the soft matter. All right, well, I think that's it. We have run the course with the mailbag tonight. Well done as always.
Yeah, baby. There's some good questions today.
There were a flood on this 4th of July week. Mailbox just pounded with questions.
It's coming. It's coming.
We've got even more, Vince. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go, baby. We got some good ones to talk about here.
Okay, here we go. So, speaking of like early July, I just say I'm very happy that EA Sports chose this first couple days of the month to put out all this information that they did with all these player rankings and stuff like that, because it's like perfect timing for some content.
Yeah, baby.
For us. So EA Sports has released its rankings of the top 100 players for the college football 26 game. Jeremiah Love comes in at number 4 overall. Leonard Moore, number 38. Emil Wagner at number 60. And wide receiver Malachi Fields, of course, the transfer from Virginia, at number 89. So, any surprises, any snubs for Notre Dame on this list?
I would say I'm a little surprised that Emil Wagner is getting the kind of love that he is, but at the same time, he played every single game last year on a team that went to the national championship, and a lot of people out there don't know how to evaluate offensive linemen, and so they go with the guys that have been the steadiest and are coming back. And he was very steady. Like remember going into this time last year, we were like, I don't know, Emil Wagner can't put on weight, and like all these different things about Emil Wagner. He ends up being like we were worried about him being the weak link of the offensive line going into last year, and then he ends up being the most reliable,
most consistent. Yeah,
and so I don't have a problem with him being there. I think there's guys on the offensive line of Notre Dame that are more talented than Emil Wagner, but they haven't been there for a whole season. So it's like I'm fighting with myself as to whether or not to be like critical of that or like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? So that would be the first thing that popped into my head. Other than that, I guess, I feel like Christian Gray belongs on that list. We're talking about top 100 across the country. He's the first one that came to mind of somebody who might have been snubbed. I think there's some guys that could work their way onto that list, based on what I think they're going to do this year. But, they got 4 guys in the top 100. Like, I'm curious, did they do a breakdown by school? Like, which schools had the most by chance?
I did not see anything like that. I just saw a straight list of who the 100 were.
Okay.
So,
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But four is not bad. I mean, they got 4 guys in the top 100. That's not bad.
I mean, when I looked at this list and I saw Emil Wagner at number 60, that definitely was like, I would call that the biggest pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
That Wagner ended up all the way up at, because it's like he's not even, like Malachi. Honestly, if I knew that Wagner and Fields were both going to be on the list based on a lot of the hype that Fields has got from, sort of nationally coming in here to Notre Dame, because he does have, more experience. One, he's got a little bit of a track record in a different offense and all that kind of stuff. I would have thought that maybe Wagner would have been 89 and Fields up there at number 60. So I would definitely say Wagner, biggest pleasant surprise. Again, I thought maybe Fields would be a little bit higher, but based on the hype that he's had, still obviously warranted to be on the list. And, like in terms of the snubs, I don't think, like someone, I think Joe said Charles Jagasaw. And I mean, from a pure talent standpoint,
yes,
he definitely could be on this list, but he only played in 2.5 games last year. Like that's
like 1.5 games the year before or whatever
it
ended up being.
Exactly.
Like, he doesn't have enough under his belt.
Right. And again, this is an EA Sports rating. So they're literally going off, everything they know about this guy from a pure, playing standpoint. There are probably a million other offensive linemen who also played in 2 or 3 games last year, and they might
Right.
be really good as well, but they just haven't played enough, So I think like Jagasaw, if he plays to what we think that he can play and he sticks around for another year, that'll be the biggest question for him.
Sure.
He would be on this kind of list next year for sure.
And look, I actually agree with this. God's Nuclear ICBM says Notre Dame should have 12 top 100 players if Emil made the cut. And I love Emil, but Jags, Schrouth, Craig are all better. I don't disagree with you that they have more talent. I'm not disagreeing with you at all on that. The problem is if you add up every start that those other guys have, it doesn't even, I don't think it equals what Emil Wagner has. And that's what people are going to look at right now.
Yeah. Cause like Schrouth wasn't a starter, all season. Craig was obviously, he only played in 3 games last year. And, again, this is a video game ranking. So it's not like we're getting too worked up about it, but at the, that's why it's a video game putting together skill sets for these guys based on how they performed last year. It's really cool that Notre Dame has a guy like Jeremiah Love that's ranked as high as he is, all the way up at number 4 and the number 1 running back in the country. And then Leonard Moore, for that matter, at number 38. And the fact that they've got 4 top 100 guys, even though it's a video game ranking, it does speak to where the program is going, because they break it all down by, I think it's like 5 or 6 different, agility, speed, strength, all this different stuff, awareness, all these different things. So,
well, and they, you see how excited the pro guys get about, their mad rankings and ratings and all that stuff. So, I mean, this is the college version of that, right? And so these guys get excited about it. It means something to them. You know what I mean? And so it means something for sure.
Father David says Jelly would be top 50, but Vince convinced EA to lower him.
Wish I had that kind of power, man. I'd be calling up EA to talk about all kinds of stuff.
Salty, of course, thinks the great one is a snub. I think there's a case for Bowen. I wonder where he ended up being ranked in this thing. Great one again. Like, if he had like 4 more games like he had his last 2 games, there's probably a really good case for him to be in a ranking like this. But not quite there. Not quite there. Just a little bit more, and it's not all on him, obviously. The connection with the quarterback is a big thing. So EA has Love ranked as the number 1 running back and Moore as the number 3 corner in the country in their rankings. Those 2 guys were also named to the Walter Camp preseason All-American team yesterday. Which is the bigger deal, the EA Sports ranking or the preseason All-American honor?
Are you asking me or are you asking a 20-year-old? Because I think that might be a different answer. You know what I mean? But for me, the preseason All-American list is so much more important than anything a video game person would have to say about how good these guys are. Now, look, they're both very, very good, obviously. I think the preseason All-America love is legit, though, and they both deserve it. And I think that is an amazing honor. So I would go with the preseason All-American list.
See, I think it's the EA ranking.
Oh, look at you.
It's for this reason. Preseason All-American teams are like preseason polls. And like I saw the Big 12 did away with its preseason, football poll this year. Because like Arizona State was picked, second to last year. And look where they ended up. Like, preseason All-American teams mean nothing. Like, do they even publish those in your bio, at the end of the year? Like, it is what you actually do during the season. Like, if this was postseason All-American, like actual season All-American versus preseason, it would be a lock. But like, no matter what's one of the things that's cool about these video games now coming out with the actual players being in there and the fact that they are using their name, image, and likeness is forever. Jeremiah Love for the 2026 EA Sports game is always going to be the number 1 ranked running back in the EA Sports 26. Leonard Moore is always going to be the 3rd ranked cornerback as a sophomore in this preseason All-American. I can do without it. Like, it's the actual end of season All-American teams that matter. So like, for that reason, I think the EA ranking means more. And, like, to your point as well about what the kids think of it to a 20-year-old or whatever, they might they might publicly say, "Oh, that's great," but I got to do it on the all those.
Oh no, it
different
means
kind of
something
things.
if
I
you're
think
under
it
a
means
certain
something
age.
to them though. There's
No
a
doubt.
lot of yeah.
No doubt about it. Like I said, it's in the same ballpark as your Madden rating. And these guys are getting rated now, and that means something. There's no doubt about it. So it's huge for them. Are you kidding me? Oh no, it's massive.
Yep. Neither CJ Carr nor Kenny Minchey showed up in EA's top 20 quarterback rankings. Fair or foul?
It's fair for now. I mean, we don't know who the starter is going to be, and if EA goes out and says, one guy over the other, and then you're going to have all kinds of whatever, and you're better off just leaving them off the list, and I'm fine with that, to be perfectly honest. Because what if Kenny Minchey wins it over CJ Carr, and everybody thinks CJ Carr is going to win it, and they put him in the top 10 or top 20, and then he doesn't even win the job? That makes EA look stupid. So I would just leave them off completely and then let the chips fall where they may. And then one of them is going to be the returning quarterback for next year. They'll make the list. So
Absolutely
I'm
agree
okay with it.
Yeah, it's totally fair because again, like what we were talking about with Jagasaw and those kind of guys, like Carr and Minchey haven't played yet. So how are you going to be ranked in the top 20, among the quarterbacks when you haven't even played yet? So I'm
right.
Perfectly fine with it as well. Couple follow-ups. Good point from Toonsis. Every recruit in America will 100% see the EA
That's
list.
fair.
So like you're being
that's
recruited
fair.
it's like Jay Love and Leonard Moore are up there when you're playing those games. That's a good point.
This is the Joe that makes a great point, but this is the whole alternate uniform conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where all the old people are like, that's stupid, I don't want to see anything new, but then the recruits see it,
yep,
they get excited. It's the same argument, so I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, Joe said it'd be great if the players got paid more from EA if they get those rankings. That's true. Like if you're ranked in the top 100, maybe they double up what you're
because they're getting $300 or something.
I think
like
it was.
that.
I think they bumped it to 500 last year or something, if I remember right.
Yes and no would be my answer to that, because if you're in the top 100, you're making some sweet coin from your school already. And so if like you get double what EA Sports is giving you, now you make $1,000. I don't think that scratches the surface of what they're making already. So I just think there's nothing that EA Sports could give them that would put a dent in what they're already making if they're a top 100 player in the country. That's what I would say. Yeah. So I understand what he's saying, just from a perception standpoint and all of those kinds of things, and it's an honor and all that. I just don't think it would put a dent in what they're already making, and so I don't think it would even matter.
How high do you think Carr could end up being ranked by the end of the season?
Ooh. If he has the season we think he's capable of having with the weapons he has around him, I think he'd be in the top 10.
Yeah, I think he's a lock for top 20.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
I think there's, again, we haven't seen him play an actual real down, right, outside of some spring scrimmages. But I think he's a lock for top 20 and should be in the top 10.
I mean, if Notre Dame is who we think they're going to be, a top 5 football team this year, in that neighborhood, your quarterback should probably be in the top 10, right? I mean, I don't think that's not going crazy. That's not projection. If you've got a good football team, then your quarterback is probably pretty good. So, yeah, I don't think that's going too far out on a limb.
Nope, I completely agree. Joe is asking if Jeremiah Love gets paid more for being on the cover. I don't think the cover, I don't think that does anything extra. It's just like you get a little bit more extra attention.
Yeah, I mean,
all the players get a flat rate.
Yeah, basically. They got a free trip out to wherever they took the picture, and got the hobnob and all.
Got to be part of
things. I'm sure they got paid something, but I don't know that it was. I mean, there's a lot of people on that cover, so I don't know what that ended up looking like. Again, it's not going to be life-changing money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not going to be the case.
Yeah, get a little, buy a few pizzas, that kind of thing. So here's the quarterback rankings that EA has Klubnik as number 1, and then Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller, Sam Levitt, Lenora Sellers, John Mateer, Oklahoma, Carson Beck, Blake Horvath at number 8, Arch Manning, and then DJ Lagway. That's the top 10. What do you think of that?
I think CJ Carr has a great opportunity to be in the top 10.
I do too. That's what I'm saying. Like
when you put the names on the list,
yes,
I would even say he's got a decent chance to be top 5 based on that particular list. So, that's not a hard list to crack, in my personal opinion. So, yeah,
I don't think so either. Like, I'll be shocked if anyone considers Drew Aller a top 3 quarterback by the end of the season. Craig is not impressed either.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Off mentally,
he's not wrong. Maybe he's going to prove us all wrong and just be a dude this year. Maybe
like a guy like Horvath. I mean, obviously, it's a different system. It's so hard to quantify, And
I know
he has a better passer than most Navy quarterbacks.
Sure.
Didn't help him last year, but Arch Manning at number 9. I thought that was a little bit low, but I guess he's got a lot to prove this year.
He does. Well. He's still a first-year starter, so
Okay, Iowa State. We're going to predict. I was trying to find the schedule and I accidentally typed stats instead of schedule. So, in our continuing series, we're going to predict Iowa State's Vegas over-under season win total. They are projected by CBS Sports to win the Big 12 and represent the conference in the college football playoff this season. So,
wow,
we're going to go through the old Iowa State schedule, and we're going to guess their over-under. They start off with Kansas State.
That's their first game of the season is a conference game. Shoot. They are not messing around.
And those are 2 of the favorites to win the conference. I would say those 2 and Arizona State are probably the top 3 favorites right now.
You're a Coach Prime hater, apparently. Okay.
Then they've got South Dakota, and then Iowa, Arkansas State. They're at Arkansas State, actually.
That's interesting.
I know. Arizona, at Cincinnati, at Colorado, BYU, Arizona State, at TCU, Kansas, and at Oklahoma State. It's not a brutal schedule, but at the same time,
that's the Big 12, so
they play. Yeah, it's like they're playing pretty much all the contenders going into the season.
And Iowa's no slouch. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, and it's in September, which is wild. But they're hosting it. They're getting a lot of love. You are absolutely correct about that. They are getting a lot of love this year as far as what they're going to be able to do. So I'm going to put it at 9.5. Even though I don't know that I necessarily believe it, I'm going to say 9.5 because of the love that I feel like they're getting.
I'm debating between 7.5 and 8.5 is where I am. I mean, they had a really good year last year. They ended up winning 11 games overall, beat Miami in their bowl game. I'm looking to see how comparable last year's schedule is to this year. They played Arizona State in the conference championship game. They played Kansas State at the end of the season, which is interesting. They also played Iowa. Interesting, 2 years in a row. No, they did play Utah last year. Check that. I was about to say 2 years in a row they didn't play Utah. They don't play Utah this year, but they beat Utah. I'm going to go 8.5. I think it's going to be 8.5.
All right.
Iowa State.
Here we go.
So let's see. Let's find them. Vince has got 9.5. I've got 8.5 for Iowa State. I've been on a little bit of a roll lately. Will it continue?
I've been on a slump.
Here we go. Iowa State per FanDuel. 7.5.
Wow. How can you win the Big 12 being at 7.5?
Here's what's interesting, because I was looking at conference winner odds for the Big 12.
Okay.
Kansas State, Utah, and Arizona State are the three favorites according to FanDuel. All have plus 600 odds. Iowa State is 4, 5, 6, 7th according to Vegas with plus 1,000 odds. Just one spot ahead of Kansas, who has plus 1,600. So Vegas not nearly as high on Iowa State. Interesting.
Not even close.
Yeah.
They obviously don't think they're going to win the conference. That's for sure.
Yeah. I would take the over on 7.5.
Yeah.
But kind of kicking myself because that I was going back and forth 7.5, 8.5. So, oh well. So 7.5 for
that's
Iowa
I would
State.
definitely take the over on that one too.
I think so. Joe wants to know if anyone's got $100 to win him. Father David says Utah's winning the conference. That's what I thought last year. Maybe they bounce back this year. So Netflix got into the NFL broadcasting business with their Christmas Day games last year. They're going to do it again this year. Now, last year, ESPN, Fox, and CBS all allowed their announcers to be part of the Netflix broadcast, whether it was the studio show or the games. Netflix basically mined out all the announcers from these other networks. This year, ESPN and Fox say, no. They're not going to let announcers like Laura Rutledge, Tom Brady, Kevin Burkhardt, and Greg Olson be part of the Netflix extravaganza on Christmas Day NFL this year. So what do you think about this hard line by the networks, Vince?
I think the networks are starting to feel a little bit of a competition. I think before they were like, okay, you guys go ahead and you can use our guys. That's totally fine. And then I think they saw the ratings and I think they saw that, well, maybe we don't want to be helping them out as much as we are. Not that they're going to challenge them completely, but at the same time, I would guess that the networks are going to want to jump on this Christmas Day thing sooner than later because of what it could mean from a rating standpoint. And so they're not going to help out the competition anymore. They didn't see Netflix as a competition. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, last year it was more everyone, like getting along and it's like, yeah, special deal and all that kind of stuff. I think Netflix wants to continue to make this an every year thing. And like last year was sort of their entry point into the NFL. And I think that they're going to come for an even bigger package at some point. And Fox and ESPN are like, if you think you're going to broadcast NFL games, you better be shelling out some money to pay your own people. We're not just going to loan out our people anymore and let you ultimately poach them if you're going to put together your own package of games down the road. Because like there are some people who think that Netflix could even be, like part of the Sunday afternoon type thing. So,
I mean, what are the two most commonly owned apps? And I'm doing this off the top of my head. I have nothing in front of me to even, it's got to be Prime and it's got to be Netflix. Those have got to be the two that most people have both of. Would
Netflix has got the biggest global streaming reach.
Global.
Right now.
Okay. Global. That makes sense.
And, so again, like when you look at that, like the games going on in Europe, maybe Netflix like goes and it's like, well, okay, we'll take Christmas Day and we'll do all these games, like the overseas games. And, like that'll be our package. You could easily see with all the European games, the overseas games that the NFL keeps adding, you could easily see that becoming a package.
Yep. That makes sense.
I wonder, I don't know, like obviously YouTube isn't independently broadcasting, but like your question about the apps and, who's got, like the most
you pay for,
obviously. I think those three have got to be three of the top ones though, right?
Right. Agreed. And so, I mean, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Like I wouldn't have Prime Video if I didn't have Prime, shipping. You know what I mean? It's just a happy add-on, I guess.
No, that's the same because like we didn't even realize we had like Amazon until a few years. And then my wife was like, oh yeah, I've got and I was like, what? So we can actually, because we've got that, like we can watch all this stuff on our, like we can, we've got that as well. So, yep. Yeah, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Netflix strategy is going forward if they want to do this, because like Greg Olson would be like a perfect number one guy, like number one analyst after all the Tom Brady stuff. I think he's got, I don't know how much time he's got left on his contract, but if Netflix is going to be, knee deep in NFL going forward, it feels like Greg Olson would be the perfect number one analyst on that, since he's proven he can be a number one guy, and he's not going to be able to do it at Fox right now. But they're going to have to hire some people, it sounds like, if they want to keep doing games. So, okay. Did you have one more?
No, we'll do it.
Oh, you'll do it? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we'll
jump in there.
We're free. Let's go. Give us a call.
Sure. That's right. So Vince, Glenn Powell said on the Pat McAfee show this week, there is definitely a Top Gun 3 in the works.
Ooh, boy.
He said when it happens is up to Tom Cruise, but they are, quote, definitely headed back for another trip to Miramar, end quote. Scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of excitement for a third Top Gun installment?
I'm torn on this because Maverick was so good that I feel like they should just leave it alone. But I'm going to go watch I'm going to go watch it. Like, I'm going to go watch it. So I'm excited about it, because if they can match what they did with Maverick, then I'm on board. But they kind of hit all the notes in Maverick. Like,
I know.
Iceman's dead. Like there's certain things, because they did a lot of harking back to the original, which you're not going to be able to do as much. Yeah. You're not going to have the tension, with Goose's kid, in theory, unless they create something else. I don't know. I would watch it. Obviously, I'm going to watch it. So it's high. It's like an 8, 9, 10 in that neighborhood. I just don't know that it's necessary.
I'm in the 8 range, but I completely agree. And I think we've kind of talked about this before. What I'm worried about is they're going to screw it up, by trying to do too much. But at the same time, I'm excited because it's already been, 4 years since they finally released Top Gun Maverick?
Shut up. Has it been that long?
I believe it has.
Wow.
I believe it has, right? Does that sound right? Has it been 20? It was either 2021 or 2022. Maybe it was 22. But it's either been 3 or 4 years. But
22.
Okay, so 3 years, which is still...
That's still 3 years,
but there's been nothing in that time to me that compares to the excitement of what Top Gun Maverick was doing. Like, it set all kinds of records at the box office and all that, and it was a great movie. Watched it over and over again. Josh, obviously not a Top Gun fan. He gives it a 5. DJ, in the same boat.
Oh, DJ, come on, man.
But I've gone and seen the last 2 Mission Impossible movies simply because of the excitement from Maverick 3 years ago.
Wow.
Because again, I hadn't really seen, it had been kind of hit and miss with the Mission Impossibles, but in that time, I've watched them all to different levels of enthusiasm, I would say. But I'm more, they made Creed, and that was finally a fresh take on, the whole Rocky thing. Like, Rocky had finally looked like it had run its course. And then they come out with Creed, and now they've made 3 Creeds. And the first one was definitely the best of the 3. They made 3 Hangover movies. The first one was definitely the best of the Hangover movies. And the third one was just awful. And it's like, that's what I'm worried about is they've got to get the story right. And there's only so many places, like you said, that they can go with the story at this point, because they hit so many of those sentimental notes in the first one, and it's like,
yeah, exactly.
You can only go back to the well so many times.
Yeah. I mean, that's what made it so good, is that they were able, they went back to the Penny thing. They went back to Goose's son. They went back to Iceman, like all of these different throwbacks to the original movie, which made Maverick work. And so I don't know. I just don't know what's I'm not a writer, obviously. So, that's not my thing. But I just don't want them to ruin it, man. Like, it was so freaking good.
I know.
I know. I'm nervous about it, Sean.
That's what scares me. Mark says Top Gun SpaceX. Do you want to see him go to space? I mean, it would be something different.
He was almost in space.
It was almost in space at the top. Yeah, or at the beginning of the second one. Yep. Yep. Rest in peace, Val Kilmer, for sure.
And
sure.
like I said, can you have a Top Gun without Iceman? Can you?
Well, I mean, you've got, like, how much do you play up? Because like with Glenn Powell being in there, like how much do you play up? Him as sort of like the young Iceman character, and like where does Tom Cruise even come into play? Like does he hopefully he doesn't segue out of it, because I think he's still got to be a central figure. But it's like
absolutely,
it's like him, Rooster, and Hangman. Those are the three main characters at this point. Man, and you don't want to see him, like leave Penny out, hanging out to dry again.
That would be awful.
So
like that would ruin it. That would ruin the movie. Like, and the death of Iceman was a bit of a tearjerker, and I mean, you just had all these different aspects that you can't go back to. So it makes me nervous.
Toons just said he was confused in the first one. Who was the bartender supposed to be? Penny was. If you watch the original Top Gun, there, like early in Top Gun, there was a reference to joyriding with the Admiral's daughter.
Yep.
Penny, even though you never saw her in the original Top Gun, was the Admiral's daughter who went for the joyride with Maverick. And then, based on the story in Maverick, it was kind of an on again, off again sort of thing over the years between those two. So that's who Penny was.
Which makes zero sense when you compare Penny to the love interest in Top Gun. What were you thinking, Tom? Makes no sense.
Even close.
It makes no sense to me. You've got one versus the other. How did you make that choice? I got nothing. Like that. That makes... So I always had an issue with the love interest in Top Gun in the first place.
Kelly McGillis.
Yes. I always had an issue with that in the first place. And then fast forward to Maverick, where now I know like the personality and how Penny looks. What were you thinking, dude? Like, you're clearly not worried about it being the Admiral's daughter, so that wasn't going to stop you.
Right.
So like that, I big problem now. Like that makes it even worse for me. Makes it even worse when Penny is sitting right there in the wings. I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like, like at that time, like the 80s, where, like a little bit different actress might have made a difference. A lot of people like Kelly McGillis back then. Like,
I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Never have.
I thought she was an odd choice looking back on it now. Joseph, football question before we roll out of here, wants to know if Cam Williams is going to see the field this season. I mean, I think he'll see the field. I don't know to what extent. I think that he'll at least be part of the rotation. I don't know how high on the rotation because of some of these other guys. Because like between Greathouse, Faison, Malachi Fields, Will Pauling. I mean, that's
your top four.
Those are four locks right there.
It honestly, it depends on Cam Williams because he's going to be competing with Micah Gilbert. He's going to be competing with KK Smith. He's going to be, competing with all of these other guys for that 5th and 6th spot, depending on how deep they go. And only he is going to dictate how much he sees the field. And so it's really kind of up to Cam Williams. And this is going to be a very important year for him, even though I think he's only going to be a junior. This is an important year for him because there's going to be
time
talent to pass him up.
Yep.
So he's going to have to make some noise this year.
I agree. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate everybody as always. A lot of really good questions. We went deep in the mailbag tonight.
I love
all the questions. So
I love it.
Thanks for that. And thanks for the interaction as always. And again, we had the question come up in the mailbag about the big announcement. We hope that it's we hope Vince and I are both going on vacation. I'll be here tomorrow. We'll have the We In, We Out show tomorrow. And then after that, Vince and I will both be off through the middle of next week. And hopefully by the time we get back late next week, we will be able to finally make that announcement. Fingers crossed. We shall see. Hit the like button before you leave. Appreciate you as always, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.